Emma and Mark were ecstatic. They had finally found it, the perfect home, a beautiful, sprawling Victorian house nestled amongst ancient oaks on a hill overlooking the town. It had always been their dream to own such a house. They couldn't believe their luck when it came on the market. The moving truck rumbled up the driveway, filled with the promise of a new life. They were finally home. The house was everything they had hoped for. High ceilings, ornate moldings, and a sense of history that whispered from every room. They spent their first few days unpacking boxes and exploring every nook and cranny of their new home. They felt like they had stepped back in time, a happy time. Emma hung her favorite painting in the living room, a beautiful landscape with vibrant colors that seemed to pop against the dark wood paneling. Mark carefully placed his grandfather's antique clock on the mantel. It chimed softly, a comforting sound that seemed to fill the house with warmth. As they surveyed their new home, a sense of peace washed over them. Little did they know this peace wouldn't last. The first sign that something was amiss came a few nights later. Emma woke with a start. A soft whisper seemed to drift from the hallway outside their bedroom door. She lay perfectly still, her heart pounding in her chest, listening intently. The whisper came again, a low murmur that sent chills down her spine. Emma slowly reached for Mark, but he was sound asleep. She didn't want to wake him, not yet. Maybe she had imagined it. She lay there for what felt like hours, her mind racing, trying to rationalize the sound. The house creaked and groaned around her. Old houses made noises, it was to be expected, right? Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Emma crept out of bed and tiptoed to the bedroom door. Her hand trembled as she reached for the handle. She took a deep breath and slowly opened the door. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the moon through the window at the far end. Emma strained her eyes, trying to see into the shadows that seemed to dance in the darkness. She took a tentative step into the hallway, her bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. As she made her way down the hallway, she noticed a door that she hadn't seen before. It was at the end of the hall, tucked away behind a heavy velvet curtain. Curiosity got the better of her. She cautiously approached the door, her hand hovering over the tarnished brass knob. It was locked. Emma tried the knob again, but it wouldn't budge. She rattled it, but it was no use. The door was firmly locked. A strange feeling washed over her, a mixture of curiosity and unease. Why was this door here? And why was it locked? She decided to ask Mark about it in the morning. Maybe he knew something about it. The next day, Emma told Mark about the locked door. He seemed surprised. He didn't remember seeing it either. They decided to investigate together. They went back to the hallway and examined the door more closely. It was made of a dark, heavy wood, and the brass knob was cold to the touch. There was no keyhole, and the hinges were on the inside, meaning there was no way to open it from the hallway. As they stood there, Emma thought she saw something move in the shadows at the end of the hallway. It was just a fleeting glimpse, but it was enough to send a shiver down her spine. She turned to Mark, but he hadn't noticed anything. He was too busy examining the door. "This is strange," Mark said, finally looking up from the door. "I wonder what's in there." "I don't know," Emma replied, her voice barely a whisper, "but I don't like it." Section 5, Voices in the Walls. The whispers started again the following night, louder this time. Emma could have sworn she heard her name being called. She sat up in bed, her heart racing. She could feel a cold sweat prickling her skin. "Mark!" she whispered urgently, shaking him awake. "Mark, wake up!" Mark stirred groggily. "What is it, Emma? What's wrong?" "I heard something," she whispered back, her eyes wide with fear. "Someone is whispering my name." Mark listened intently, but he couldn't hear anything. "I'm sure it's nothing, honey," he said soothingly. "Just the house settling. It's old, remember?" But Emma wasn't convinced. The whispers continued, growing louder and more insistent. They seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It felt like the walls themselves were alive, whispering secrets in the dark. Section 6, the door opens. Days turned into weeks, and the strange occurrences in the house continued to escalate. Objects moved on their own, lights flickered, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent, more menacing. Emma felt like she was losing her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that something was terribly wrong. One night, Emma woke to a sound that chilled her to the bone. It was the sound of the locked door in the hallway creaking open. She lay in bed, paralyzed with fear, listening as the sound of heavy footsteps slowly approached their bedroom. Emma grabbed Mark's arm, her fingers digging into his skin. "Mark, wake up! There's someone in the house." Mark sat bolt upright in bed, his eyes adjusting to the darkness. "What are you talking about?" he whispered, his voice thick with sleep. "The door," Emma breathed, pointing a trembling finger towards the bedroom door. The locked door. It's open. Section 7. A nightmare awakened. That night, Emma had a vivid nightmare. She dreamt she was trapped in the locked room, surrounded by shadows that writhed and twisted around her. She could hear her name being whispered over and over again, each utterance filled with a chilling malice. She woke with a gasp, her heart pounding, her body slick with sweat. She fumbled for the bedside lamp, bathing the room in a warm glow. As her eyes adjusted to the light, she noticed something strange. There were scratches on the wall opposite their bed. Deep, jagged scratches that hadn't been there before. Emma got out of bed and walked towards the wall, her breath catching in her throat as she read the words that had been etched into the plaster. Let me out. Me. Section 8. Mark's terror. Mark had tried to rationalize the strange events. He told Emma it was just the wind, or the house settling, or her imagination running wild, but deep down he knew that something was wrong. He couldn't deny the evidence of his own senses any longer. One night, as Mark was reading in the living room, he saw it. A shadowy figure darted across the doorway at the end of the hall. It was gone in a flash, but he had seen it clearly. There was no mistaking it. There was something in the house with them. Mark slammed his book shut, his heart pounding in his chest. He had seen enough. He had to get Emma and get out of there. Section 9. Flight. The final night in the house was a blur of terror. The whispers reached a fever pitch, echoing through the halls like screams. Objects flew across rooms as if propelled by unseen hands, and the shadowy figure, no longer content to lurk in the darkness, seemed to stalk them from room to room. Mark and Emma huddled together in the center of their bedroom, their backs pressed against the wall, their eyes darting around the room in terror, searching for an escape. The temperature plummeted and a cold wind seemed to whip through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging them into darkness. "We have to get out of here!" Mark shouted, his voice barely audible above the roar of the wind. "Now!" They stumbled through the darkened house, their way lit only by flashes of lightning that illuminated the terror on their faces. The front door loomed before them, a beacon of hope in the maelstrom. Section 10A haunted. They didn't stop running until they were miles away from the house. They left everything behind, their belongings, their dreams, their sanity. All that mattered was escaping the clutches of the house that had promised them so much and delivered only terror. As they sped away, Emma risked a glance back at the house on the hill. Even from this distance, she could have sworn she saw a shadowy figure standing in the upstairs window, watching them go. And in that moment, Emma knew that, while they may have escaped the house, the haunting was far from over.